everyone, it's Steph here. This is the Novelty Corner and welcome to a Books Beside My Bed video. For those of you who are new here, I film one of these every week where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. And for anyone who is very familiar with the series, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about the books that I read from the 7th until the 13th of February. I read a total of 9 things this week, including 1 reference book, 2 anthologies, 2 novellas, and 4 novels, I think, if my math is right. That equated to a total of 2,026 pages, and my yearly reading total is 58 books. I was attempting to film a Netgalley reading vlog this week. I think I'm going to put that one on hold. It has been a long week, and it started out with a whole lot of work things, and then it ended with Victoria going back into lockdown, so it's been a week, guys. The first book that I read this week was Falling for His Best Friend by Katie Robert. This actually was a reread, but it was a Netgalley arc that I had, and I'd totally forgotten that I'd read it before, so rereading it wasn't a particularly arduous task, but it did take me a little while to get back into the story because I'd apparently forgotten everything about it. I ended up giving it 3.5 out of 5 stars on reread. There is content warnings for alcoholic parents, for disapproving grandparents, and also for discussions around family history of cancer. So it's not the main characters, but the heroine's mother and sister both went through cancer treatments, and that has an impact on the story, as well as some infertility issues and the inability to have children that does come up within the story. It is the story of Avery and Drew, and they've been best friends since they were kids. Avery sits down one night with Drew and some of their other friends and announces that she is going to have a baby. She is concerned that her family's history with cancer is going to affect her ability to have children later on, so she's decided to go and look at IVF and have a baby on her own, which everyone else thinks is great. Drew has real issues with it and ends up proposing to her that the two of them have a baby together because he's concerned about her raising the child on her own without support from anyone else. He's a little bit overbearing in this aspect, but you can see that he's trying to come from a good place. And everything's going swimmingly until their feelings get involved and they realize that they actually do have an actual attraction to one another, and yet Drew is very concerned about committing to long-term relationships because he believes that his family history of alcohol abuse is something that might translate to him, and he doesn't want that to affect any relationships, especially that with a child involved. So it's all very complicated and there's miscommunication and all of those sorts of things, and then eventually you get your HEA at the end. It's a pretty quick read. Katie Robert is a pretty solid author for me. I know what I'm going to get when I read her books, so it was nice to revisit this one. The next book is totally Izzy's fault because she was talking about Madison Faye in one of the live shows that she was in, and because I have absolutely no self-control, I ended up getting a free copy of 15 Inches by Madison Faye, which is a short story / novella that is pure erotica. It doesn't have an HEA in it, and it is essentially the story of Liam and Alexis. Liam is a CrossFit trainer. Alexis goes to his classes, and his classes are filled with women because the guy is hot. One night, after forgetting her bag in the lockers in the gym, she ends up going back and sees him having a shower in the ladies' change rooms because the showers in the men's room are out of order. The title of the book says it all. The first time that she walks in on him, she gets horribly embarrassed, walks out, and doesn't go back to classes for a long time. And then when she is finally convinced to go back, she decides to bite the bullet and goes back and watches him in the shower, and they have their moment, and that's basically the story. It's like a 2.5 star read. Some of it's interesting, but mostly it's just sex, so do with that what you will. Then I read Enjoy the View by Sarah Morgenthaler, which is book 3 in the Moose Springs, Alaska series, which I have not read the previous 2 books, but you can technically read this one without reading the other 2. I don't actually think that is anything that hindered my reading experience with these books. I ended up giving this book, I think, if I'm being completely honest, it's a 2.5 star book for me, but I think I rounded it up to 3 stars because there may have been external circumstances affecting my opinion of this book. It is the story of River Lane and Easton Lockett. River is a actress who is trying to make her break into directing and producing, and she has got a job producing an advertisement for Moose Springs for the Alaskan Tourism Board. However, the people of Moose Springs really don't want outsiders coming to their town, so they're violently opposed to this documentary being filmed, and they are quite hostile to River and her 2-man crew. She's eventually convinced to stop trying to get the townspeople on board and to start filming local scenery by local Easton Lockett, who ends up being the tour guide who takes them up one of the town's featured mountains. And then River and Easton have their romance that unfolds from there. There are some really funny scenes in here. However, the one thing that drove me absolutely bonkers in this book was River, who's not quite too stupid to live, but is very, very close to it. I just couldn't stand her. And I very rarely have such a visceral reaction to characters, but she annoyed the hell out of me. And it made it really hard to like the story and to want to keep reading. This book took me ages to read for something that's only like 300 and something pages long. And my frustration grew as they actually started climbing up the mountain because she's supposed to be an experienced climber, and that's fine, nothing wrong with that. But when you have a guide who is taking you up a mountain and you're out there camping and it's cold and things can go horribly wrong, and you have a guide who is trying to explain the safety measures, you don't make fun of the guy who's trying to make sure that you're staying safe. I don't care how famous you are, I don't care how cool you are, you pay attention to the safety instructions. And then when you're up the mountain, you follow the safety instructions. I know that was probably supposed to build tension in the story, but it just irritated the crap out of me. It made it really hard to enjoy the story because one of the main characters, I didn't like her. It's as simple as that. I don't often have characters that I don't like to that extent. So yes, I wish I could have liked it. I was really, really excited to read the book and it just fell so flat for me. And I know so many people love it as well, which is a real shame because I really, really wanted to like it. So after that, I had to pick something I knew I was going to enjoy. So I picked up Blind Date with a Book Boyfriend by Lucy Eden, which is a novella. I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars. Lucy Eden is a Black author. It is the story of Jordan and Mike who meet in a bookstore while discussing books in the Blind Date with a Book section. And Mike reveals that he reads romance and he's able to pick all of the titles in the Blind Date with a Book section. And he ends up convincing Jordan, who's new to town, to come and have lunch with him and to continue talking books. And it ends up turning into sort of like a date day. Then they have a night together and we find out that Jordan is in town because she is applying for a job, and then of course there are complications when Jordan finds out who Mike really is, and the story goes from there. But it is a really short novella, so there's a lot packed into a very short amount of space, but it was so fun and cute and adorable, and I just loved both Jordan and Mike. They were great characters. Then I read Once Upon a Dream by Sierra Simone. This is an anthology of 3 of her novellas. I ended up giving this collection 4.5 out of 5 stars. Sierra Simone is just a very consistent writer for me. I know that she's not everyone's cup of tea, but I really like her. The novellas in this collection included American Witch, which is a novella that fits into the New Camelot series, and this follows Morgan and also her ex-husband and does feature content warnings for BDSM and also power dynamics within a relationship. There was also Music Box Girl, which featured Cam and Tamsin. This one has content warnings for an age gap, for a controlling parent. There is an orgy scene, and there is also mentions of a BDSM club, so keep all of those in mind. And then there was also Red and White, which was the polyamorous Snow White, Rose Red, and the Huntsman story that I read at the end of last year, I'm pretty sure. I really liked this collection. I find Sierra Simone's writing very easy to read and very easy to fall into, and it was nice to revisit Morgan from the New Camelot series because she was quite a fascinating character, but she was only a side character in that series because it really does delve into her identity, because she is a dominant and her relationship with her ex-husband really called that into question. She doesn't really know how to deal with that. So it's all about these power plays that were deeply fascinating to read about. And it made me want to go back and read the New Camelot series, which I don't have time for at the moment, but I really, really want to do it. Then I read Dark Needs at Night's Edge by Chris Cole, which is Immortals After Dark book 4. I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars. It is now my favourite of the series so far. Content warnings for violence, for another hero hacking off his own body parts, because apparently that's what this series does, and lots of blood and gore. Naomi is a former ballerina who was killed by her ex-fiancé 80 years earlier, and she is stuck in the house that she was killed in. So she is a ghost, and then the vampire Conrad Roth is brought kicking and screaming by his brothers into this house 80 years in the future to recover from drinking from the vein, which is a big no-no in this world. It basically sends vampires mad because when they drink from the vein, they inherit the memories of the people that they have drunk from. As it turns out, he's the only one who can see Naomi, and no one has seen her in many, many years. So she finds this deeply fascinating and spends a lot of time with him. The two end up falling in love. They find out that they're fated mates, and that's the story. There's lots of other things that go along with it, but that's basically the premise. And we get lots of Marikatta and Nyx in it, who were, up to this point, my 2 favourite characters from the series, so it was nice to see them. I like how mercenary the witches are and how basically they charge an arm and a leg for everything. I think that's great. Then I read The Teacher's Guide to the Writer's Workshop Essentials. This is by Catherine Bomer and Corinne Arends. I was reading this for work, really enjoyed it. It's very short, very colourful, very practical, very easy to read. And this is great for anyone who is implementing the writer's workshop in their classroom, which is basically me and my entire school, and I'm training them on it. So very useful. The great thing about this series is that it includes actual video demonstrations as well as downloadable resources, but that is my next goal, especially since I'm not actually teaching my kids for the next 3 days while we're in lockdown, so I'm going to be catching up on all of those. But the book itself is great. Then I read Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell, which is a new release science fiction romance story. It is also a debut and it was great. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I was really, really pleasantly surprised by this story despite almost psyching myself out of reading it. Because you know when a book's really hyped and you hear lots of really good things about it, you get really concerned? That's me all the time with those books. There are content warnings in this book. The author's website does have them listed, but I will go through the ones that I have really briefly. There is domestic abuse and dubious consent towards a marital partner, and that is something that happened in the past, but it is referenced particularly towards the climax of the story as it affects the decision making of one of the main characters. There is also kidnapping, and there is also interrogation/torture, depending on how you want to look at it, of the same character. There's a lot going on here. It is essentially a science fiction romance with political intrigue woven into it. We start the book with Prince Kiem of Iskat, who has been summoned in front of the emperor, who happens to be his grandmother, I believe. She basically sits him down and tells him that it's time he's stepped up. He's going to marry one of the diplomatic representatives of one of their vassal planets, Thea, and it just so turns out that this representative is the former husband of Kiem's cousin who has recently died. And the marriage has to happen because they need a treaty between all of the planets to remain in place. So no one gets a say in this, it's just happening. Count Janin, who is the man that Kiem is about to marry, is a very broken man. So his former partner has been dead for just under a month or so. Then he signs off on this marriage because he believes that it is his diplomatic duty in order to do that. But he's very distant, almost cold towards Kiem. And then as the two sort of begin to get to know each other, they become more comfortable around one another. They discover that perhaps the death of Janin's former husband is not what it seems, and they end up becoming embroiled in this political intrigue plot with a lot of people trying to implicate them as the people responsible for it. And it's very twisty and turny, and it is quite technical in terms of the political side of things. So there was a lot of things that had to be built up. So there's lots of world building. For a while, I struggled to keep everything straight, but once I got into the flow of the story, I was good. So this is a really solid debut, and I look forward to seeing what Everina Maxwell comes out with next. And then finally this week I read the Wicked Villains shorts by Katie Robert. I have read most of these before. This is the anthology collection of some of her short stories that she released around the Wicked Villains characters from that particular series. Overall, the collection's about a 4.5 for me because I just enjoy the characters. And I think there was only one short story in here that I hadn't read before, which was the last one. So it was nice just to go back and reread all of the others and then read the one that I hadn't before. And it only took me about an hour. It's very short, but it was just delightful. There's content warnings for everything in this series, from polyamory to BDSM to consensual non-consent. Like, it's all in here. Basically consider all of the trigger warnings from all of the books in the series and then just apply them to the short stories and you're good. So that is everything that I read in the last 7 days. It's been a bit of a roller coaster from books I enjoyed, books I really didn't particularly enjoy, and just life stuff throwing curveballs at me. But the week is done. We are starting fresh, and I'm looking forward to picking up some really good books in the next 7 days. In the comments, let me know what you have been reading over the last 7 days. And if you've read any of the books that I have read this week, feel free to chat to me about them down below. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you're in the world, you are staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you very soon in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.